Welcome, everybody, to this week's version of the Awesome Dynamic Show. I'm Terry Levin, our Director of Sales here at Awesome Dynamic. We got some great topics we're going to be talking about today. So I want to bring Tim in right away. Tim, we're talking about Amazon sponsored products and search term strategy today. Can't wait to hear what you got planned for us.
Great. Thank you, Terry. Yes, indeed. It's almost like you read the title this time around. So thank you so much for that introduction, Terry. And yes, let me bring it up here. And we will be talking again about sponsored products and search term strategy. So that includes, the how to optimize your search terms in your listings, overview of pay-per-click ad campaigns, and how to use some of that pay-per-click campaign information to help guide your keywords and your keyword research. So without any further ado, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is how do you optimize your search terms? And we really have to start out by really going through and talking about what Amazon's do's and don'ts are. So let's go through the do's first. I always like to start with positives. So let's take a look through them. So what you'll notice is when you look at your product listing, there's a whole section called search terms that you can fill out with a bunch of information. Sometimes it's just one single box. Sometimes it's 5 separate boxes. Amazon's moving over to where you only have one box and you can fill out all your search terms in there. But yeah, it's important to make sure that you utilize this information and utilize that that box inside of the listing. And B, you want to make sure that you fill it out as much as possible. They give you a lot of characters, and how many characters you get really depends on the category that you're in. But you really want to make sure that you fill out all that information as fully and completely as possible. So the next thing is Amazon recommends that you put your search terms in the most logical order. It doesn't matter in some instances, but if there is an order to a very common phrase that you think is searched for your particular product, then you may want to actually put them in that particular order. So we have an example here. So let's say you're selling teddy bears. You don't want to put, you do want to put them in order. So you would say big stuffed teddy bears. You would not want to put them in the order of teddy stuffed bears big. That's not how we speak, so that's not how people would actually search for that term, and it can help you with your results if you actually do put them in a logical order like this.
Now, with that being said, Tim, I want to pop in here and talk about how the format of the keywords and how you do it in Amazon and their algorithm is very different than what works on Google or SEO in general. A lot of folks that we come across are using the standard keyword formats where if it was big stuffed teddy bears and big stuffed teddy bear, that matters on Google and matters for normal SEO for websites. However, in Amazon, that doesn't matter. You don't need to do both versions of the keyword there, and that's something that it is an important distinction. So you just need to put the word once. You don't have to put all the versions of the word. All that stuff will be taken care of by Amazon. That's not something that really makes a huge difference how you show up in Amazon search as it does in Google search. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand. I know, Tim, I looked at the rest of your slides. You're going to get into some of the other things that are specific to Amazon, but that one distinction is so important to understand. You don't need to do both. You do big stuffed teddy bear. Amazon will know to do the version with the S and without the S for bears or bear. You don't need to do that. You don't need to reiterate the same words over and over again in different orders. You just need to put all the words that are relevant in those different search fields. Back to you, Tim.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul. Yeah, that's a really good high overview of how the search terms really work differently. But yeah, we will definitely be going into more detail of what the exact ways that it works. All right. So additionally, in terms of what you can do with the search terms is that Amazon highly recommends that you do abbreviations for your products. So let's say if you're selling something that is or related to Lord of the Rings, a lot of people use the search LOTR, which is the abbreviation for Lord of the Rings, to search for it. So you might want to put that into your search terms. Another example is alternate names for the same thing. So keeping in mind that we might have some people that use slightly different terminology. So let's say you're selling a pair of pants, you might want to include the words trousers or slacks in there as well. Different topics for the same product. So if you're, an example that we have here is you're selling something that's a sci-fi book about time travel, even though the book itself may belong in the sci-fi category, it also can belong in the time travel category, or it might belong a little bit into the history category. Anything like that, you would want to add additional topics for your particular product into the search term field. And related as well to this, any key characters or background information. So, using the Harry Potter books or movies as an example, Harry Potter is already in the title of the product. So you might want to include sub-characters like Hermione Granger as an example. Great. So that's all the additional things that we want to talk about. Now we're going to get into the long list of items that you do not want to do with your keywords to get the most out of them. So the first thing is you don't want to repeat any redundant information. Again, you don't want to repeat any kind of redundant information. So the whole idea is, let's say if you already have a term in different places of your listing, you do not need to also include that term in your search terms as well. So Amazon already indexes anything that you have in your title, the author. So again, talking about the product itself, or if you're talking about a movie or video game, DVD, anything like that. Anything in your product description, your bullet points, your brand, and I think that's about it. And just to give you an example of something that you do not need to do, let's say you're selling this gold ring, so diamond flower 14 karat white gold ring. You then do not need to use gold or ring in any part of the search terms field, because that has already been covered by the title. All right, that's one thing that I think a lot of people look over, is they are trying to repeat a lot of the same things over and over again. It is to kind of expand on that a little bit more, it doesn't benefit you necessarily in terms of how well you rank on Amazon. However, Amazon pages do get indexed by Google, so it may actually help you in terms of your Google results if you repeat keyword phrases. And I think Paul wanted to touch a little bit on that subject as well, right?
That's correct. So in the world of Google and trying to rank on Google, and obviously if the Amazon page is indexed on Google, you would want to repeat the one keyword phrase that you want that page to rank for. So from a Google perspective, that repetition, and that's something that a lot of people are taking those SEO things that they may have learned about how to rank in Google and trying to apply them to Amazon. So it's, again, an important distinction that the Amazon algorithm isn't going to be influenced by repetition of a keyword phrase. But from a Google perspective, if I want this Google listing to show up really well on Google, some repetition will help that to happen. But one technique that a lot of people use that's old, it's probably 2 or 3 years old, that is now penalized by Google, is keyword stuffing. So if you just throw tons and tons of keywords in repetitious places, like in the title, in the bullet points, in the description, and in addition to the keywords that are in the back end, which actually Google doesn't see in that back end of the listing, you can actually fall in the Google search results for that index product listing page on Amazon. So the technique for Google, if you want that product listing to show up on Google, you would want to have the one keyword phrase. So if it is big teddy bear, you'd want to pick that one phrase, and that's what would be in your product title. It'd be once maybe in your product description. It'd be once in your description down there, and so bullets, title, description, and you really don't have a lot of control over any other aspects of the page. But you can put a little bit of repetition there. Generally, you're trying to influence that body text on the page. That can also generate what's happening in the title tag for the page potentially. But you're looking at a 2.5% maximum keyword density on whatever keyword phrase that you have, and minimum 0.5% keyword density. So if you're really trying to think about this, or how do I get this product detail page indexed on Google really well, those are important points to take away from what I just said. So back to you, Tim, on the next slide, please.
Great, thank you, Paul. And I also wanted to bring up a quick question here that was asked by Elizabeth. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being on today's webinar again. We had you on last week. Elizabeth asks, I read somewhere that the SKU and UPC is good to have in the keywords. Is that correct? In our research that we did to prepare for this webinar, we always like to check and make sure we have the most up-to-date and current policy information from Amazon whenever we do one of these. Amazon nowhere said anything about them indexing SKUs and UPCs. They specified just the parts of your listing that we have on the page here. So Amazon, when we generally search for a UPC, we can usually find it on Amazon as long as that field is filled out on your detail page. But in terms of the SKU, Amazon usually regards the SKU as an internal identifying number, so they may not actually index that. At least that's my feeling on that. If the SKU you believe is something that is searchable, that you want to be searchable for customers who are looking for your product, then yeah, it might actually be a good idea to have that as part of your search terms. Paul, I didn't know if you wanted to chime in at all on that.
Yes, I definitely can. I was taking a look at one of Elizabeth's products, assuming this is the Elizabeth that we're talking about, and I was just looking at how Amazon is currently optimizing their pages for anything that you put in there. So what's interesting is they're essentially taking the product title and repeating it in the meta description, the meta title, the meta keywords for her product. They're just using the brand name only, and for the and they're putting it in the URL as well. But the URL for this one, so I'll go ahead and tell you which product. I'm looking at a Funflector here. Funflector, safety reflector, reflective bicycling, and then that's the URL I see in the meta description. It has the name of the product title in the and in the meta keywords, it just says Funflector only. So I can see in a few different places here, they're just repeating the product title and the product, the brand name. And really, as I go through the rest of the source code on this page, it's really not embedded in any other places. So you're really just looking at getting that into the whatever you have in your product title and your brand name is really the only places where it will flow through. Anything that you use will flow through. So with that being said, the meta title for a particular product listing page controls what that blue link is that you click on in Google. So since you do have some control today on this, I would put the keyword that you want to rank for at the very beginning of your product title if you're concerned for how it would be ranking on Google.
Great, thank you, Paul. And yeah, that's kind of a little bit at odds almost with the recommendation of mobile searchers on the Amazon platform, where they only see a shortened part of your title, especially if it's a long title. So it's one of those things where you as a seller would really have to figure out which is more important to you, the Google search results or the actual Amazon search results. And we oftentimes side with Amazon search results because the whole idea of being on Amazon is that you're in front of all these millions of customers that are already shopping on the Amazon platform. And then you can use other SEO techniques to try and leverage, let's say, your website to try and get more sales and views through that avenue.
And that's exactly what I would recommend. If you're looking and concerned about getting your product showing up in Google, I wouldn't worry about optimizing the product listing on Amazon's website. I'd worry about creating a website with a page for your product and getting that optimized, because you're going to have tremendous control over all aspects of the SEO for that page, and then you can then refer that person that came through on Google over to Amazon, and you can even get a percentage back of your commission if you're in the affiliates program, but that's for a different webinar. So let's continue, Tim.
So many topics to cover, so little time. You know, it's and that's why we like to provide this valuable information to everyone who watches. So great. Well, thank you so much for the great question, Elizabeth. And with that, we will move on to talking about some more items that you do not want to do with your keywords. And the next item is going to be using punctuation to separate search terms. So you do not want to have any kind of commas, any kind of semicolons, or any kind of carets. Just separate each search term that you have in your product listing with a space, and that's all you need to do. So very straightforward and simple. I know a lot of people who like to put, I've seen everything from commas and semicolons. I've seen dashes between words, all sorts of different things. And for the most part, Amazon will just ignore that, and it just reduces the number of characters that you can use in your search terms field anyways. So the next thing is you do not need to include common misspellings for words. So Amazon search engine already compensates for common customer misspellings, and you can see that when you actually search for a product on Amazon, their autocomplete will actually start telling you that there's a correction for the term that you just entered. So Amazon understands this, and they have a lot of data to kind of back it up and help get the right result for when someone searches for something that's misspelled. So you do not need to worry about that whatsoever. If it's an uncommon misspelling, though, you might want to include that, but for common ones, do not need to worry about that. All right, so next is providing variants. So let's say if you are putting in words, so let's say sometimes a word comes with a space, sometimes it doesn't come with a space. You do not need to have both variants in there. As long as you have both words in there separated, then Amazon will be smart enough to be able to compensate and be able to show results for any of those search terms. You also do not need to add in any kind of punctuation within the middle of a product. And I know this is very common with, let's say, model numbers. You know, there's oftentimes dashes or dots or things like that inside of model numbers, and if that's the case, you can just leave them out because Amazon will ignore them anyways when it comes to searching. The other thing is capitalization. You do not need to do both a capital version as well as a lowercase version of the same words, and you do not need to do pluralization. That's what Paul touched on earlier, of saying, you know, you don't need to do bear and bears. As long as bear is already inside of the search terms or in one of the other parts indexed by Amazon, you do not need to put in another variation of that particular term just because it's plural or it has a slightly different capitalization, etc. The next thing is just to give you some examples of what you see in terms of variations. You do not need to do both 80 GB, all as one word, and 80 space GB, as Amazon will treat both of them exactly the same. So you do not need to worry about putting spaces or putting both versions of that search term. And if I were to err on the side of, I would err on the side of doing the one with the space in there, and Amazon will combine them together. But either one will generate results. Again, talking about pluralization, you do not need to do computer and computers. You can just do computer, and that will be fine. Let's say you have a model number for your product that has, according to your records, has a dash after in some portion of it or in different portions of it. Amazon, again, will just drop those and completely ignore them. So you can actually just put in one of those, and Amazon will compensate for anyone that types in the model number with or without the dashes or any other punctuation. And just to reiterate about the whole capitalization and pluralization of words, if you just put in the word color, that will cover all of the different variations that you see on the screen here. Color capitalized, color not capitalized, colors capitalized, pluralized, and colors not capitalized and pluralized. So you do not need to do all of those different versions in your search terms.
I wanted to chip in for a moment if I could, Tim.
Sure, Blake. Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to point out an example since we're finishing up the variant section and we had just covered the common misspellings. This one kind of falls in between both. Is here's an example of what to do for a variant of, let's say, blueberry, strawberry, anything with a berry, and it becomes plural. So someone that's selling something blueberries or strawberries, where they're not just adding an S, it's getting changed to an IES. Those do not count as variants, and has been tested with our company to show that those are not included with Amazon's kind of back-end code to figure everything out. So those are ones you would definitely want to include in your keyword bank if you sell something where the ending gets spelled quite drastically different.
Okay, so you do not need, so just to kind of summarize, thank you, Blake, for that. I completely forgot about that, but you just reminded me. So you do not need to include any standard pluralizations where it just adds an S to the end, but if there's any non-standard pluralization like blueberries as opposed to blueberry, then you should include both of those in your search terms.
Thank you for summing that up. Something I'm not good at.
No, that's quite all right. You know, just want to make sure everyone gets the information that will help them. All right, great. So next part we are going to move on to, and you know, this is a pretty long section here, but lots of great information. You need to make sure you do not provide any inaccurate, misleading, or irrelevant information. And this is a relatively new policy change that Amazon had in terms of what you can and cannot do with your search terms. And we have a few examples of exactly what they mean with this. So in terms of any misleading information, you cannot include a competitor's product or brand name in your search term fields or anywhere in your listing. So that is a big no-no for Amazon, and you need to make sure that you do not include those. If Amazon finds out that you're doing that, and they consider that kind of gaming the system and possibly misleading customers, and Amazon does not take kindly to that. And that's one of the reasons why Amazon changed their whole review system, is because they felt like customers who were might have been misled by having all these free products leading to reviews, and that these reviews, even though they are disclosed as being exchanged for a free product, they may in fact still just kind of have a bias to them and mislead customers to buying something that maybe they otherwise would not have. So that's an example of something that is misleading. Also inaccurate information. So let's say if you're selling a product that's made for women and you put in there men's or men into there, then that is technically against Amazon's. This is Amazon's own example, is just by putting the wrong gender in there. And unrelated popular terms. I'm trying to think of an example of this. So let's say if I remember in Amazon's examples, it's a product that was basically a home accessory, and in the search terms they put something like Obama into the search terms. That is completely unrelated. Even though a lot of people may be searching for that term, it is not related to your product whatsoever, and therefore it does not belong inside of that search terms box. Right. Got a little bit more to go here before we take our mid-webinar break with Terry. Next part is going to be other parts that you cannot include in your search terms are anything that is only temporarily true. So let's say if you want to put in there that this is a new product, the only problem with that is it only stays new for a certain amount of time. And I think people have kind of different definitions of what exactly new is. So you should not include anything like that. You cannot put and state something is on sale in any of your search terms or any part of your product listing. That belongs in the offer section. That has nothing to do with your actual listing itself. And saying that like a product is available now. Well, it is available now because it's for sale. So yeah, you can't put anything like that in the back end search terms, just like you can't include them in any part of the product detail page. Before I move on here, Rebecca, who has another question. Rebecca, she asks, what does Amazon mean by wrong gender? Amazon doesn't clarify exactly what they mean by wrong gender. I would assume that if it's a product that is marketed and designed for one gender and you put in the other gender into there, or a different gender into there, then that's what they may mean. So that's something that you would have to contact Amazon to get clarification on that. But that is an example that Amazon directly gave in their help files.
One addition I want to add on to that, Rebecca, it's not uncommon that the help files are ambiguous and don't have all the answers. And many times for any clarification on things, the process to which you get clarification is by contacting Amazon. So that's something that we constantly are doing for our clients all the time. If they come up with a specific question, or even we're constantly analyzing the help files, we come across something new or something we haven't really dove that deep into on a particular definition on something, you just open a case with Amazon, begin a conversation to try and get some information. Another point of clarification that should be noted is that sometimes the first person you talk to gives you an answer, but we never consider that the final answer. So when you communicate with Amazon, we have a great webinar all about that. That's actually on our Amazon page, the main Amazon page on awesomedynamic.com with Ted Limas, about how your communication with Amazon is dysfunctional and to get over it. A lot of times you just got to be patient and persistent, keep pushing until you get somebody who knows what they're talking about. We've had plenty of experience working with folks on Amazon, either on the phone or through the case management system, that even give suggestions that are contradictory to the policies that are listed in their help files. So sometimes the first answer, you think, I'm contacting Amazon, they're going to give me the right answer right away because they know what they're doing. That isn't necessarily the case. You're starting with a tier 1 person in many cases with Amazon that isn't going to give you the right answer. And like I said, starting on this whole tangent, a lot of the information in the help files isn't expressly clear. So you just have to reach out to them and begin that process of communicating with them to get the clarity that you're looking for. So with that, Tim, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul. Yeah, we're just mostly reporting on exactly what information Amazon gives us. And I wish we had more insight into that. But thank you so much for asking the question, though, Rebecca. All right. So let's move on to the next section here. Also, you want to make sure you do not include any kind of subjective claims. So what are some exact subjective claims? These are the kind of things that customers really don't use when they're searching for a product. A couple examples of this is amazing. So you might want to put amazing into your product details section, but that's again subjective. I might think it's amazing, but someone else may not. So that really does not belong at all into the search terms or really anywhere in the listing, as we've talked about in our last webinar. Good quality. So do you really see anyone using the search good quality in terms of when they're actually looking for it on Amazon? No, they might use a slightly different search term. And again, this is a subjective claim. I'm a little bit, again, this is an example that Amazon gave. I think you could definitely call your product a high quality product somewhere in there. And, I don't think that's too subjective personally. But again, this is what Amazon's policy says, is that this is an example of something that Amazon would not allow in their listing.
I do want to make one quick clarification on that, Tim. I certainly agree in terms of optimizing the keywords. Those things might not be the best things to use, and I agree with that. But when you're talking about those first 3 bullet points that people take a look at when they click onto the listing, that's essentially your sales pitch, in my opinion. The first 3 bullet points are the first 3 that show up on the mobile devices. Obviously, there's 5. Some cases you can have more if you have a vendor relationship with them. But the idea here is if you're just listing facts about your product, it's not really going to get people excited to buy. So we usually look at the first 3 bullet points on the product listing as the opportunity to use some of that subjective language to get people excited to buy your product. We call it compelling sales copy. That does highlight the facts and also makes them feel really good about the product. So it triggers that emotional response for them to buy. But I just want to make that clarification. And Tim, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to you again.
Thank you, Paul. All right. So next, we do not want to include any terms that are abusive or offensive in nature. Amazon doesn't really go into any kind of clarification of this, but essentially, you just want us to steer clear of anything that you think anyone could think is abusive or offensive, just to be on the safe side. When it comes to when it comes to any of these things that we just talked about, there is always this sort of gray line that you want to be careful of, where as long as what you do with your search terms and everything is not going to mislead a customer, or it's not going to really manipulate anything in Amazon's system, and what you do is actually customer focused, we generally find that Amazon can be a little bit lax about enforcing some of these policies, and that again, just keep everything customer centric, and it usually will be fine. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Paul.
Yeah, it's all about the customers. 95% of their resources go into customer service. And if you are making decisions regarding anything about how you're presenting your product, so long as the true intent is to benefit the customer in some way, you're able to kind of walk the gray line in some of these different policies from time to time. If the intent behind what you're trying to do is to mislead the customer or boost your sales at the detriment of the customer's best interest, that's where you start to go on the other side of that gray line.
Great, thank you, Paul. All right, so our next section is going to be about an overview of pay-per-click ad campaigns. But before we do that, I want to go ahead and hand the floor over to Terry. Terry, why don't you take it away?
Thank you very much, Tim. All right, folks, at this point, I just want to talk a little bit about Awesome Dynamic for those of you that might be joining in and haven't gotten to know us very well. Obviously, we are Amazon seller consultants. That's what we're talking about today. But the bottom line on what we do here at Awesome Dynamic is getting you new targeted customers, whether we're doing that with Amazon consulting, whether we're doing that with responsive web design, our SEO programs, or doing a Google virtual tour for you to help get you a little more online exposure to your business. We're all about getting you those new targeted customers. We talk all the time how our new customers are calling us. We want to know if they're calling you, and if they're not, these are all the different ways we can help you. To reach us, you can go to terry@awesomedynamic.com or give us a call at 800-238-1811. And we'll help you get those new targeted customers. So that's our little mini commercial. We'll talk a little more about our website and some of our other things at the end of the program, but I want to get it right back to Tim to keep on moving.
Great, thank you so much, Terry. Yeah, so let's jump back in. Let's talk about overview of pay-per-click campaigns, and this is what Amazon calls sponsored products. So that's what Amazon terms everything. That's why this webinar is called that, but really it's Amazon's pay-per-click campaigns is what Amazon is referring to when we're talking about sponsored products. So let's dive in, and I know we're going to have Blake kind of join in on some of this stuff to help describe some of this, since he's one of the ones that has a lot of experience working with this on a regular basis. But the first thing we want to go over is, okay, I want to be able to do pay-per-click ad campaigns on Amazon. What are the requirements in order for me to be able to be eligible to do this? And so we'll go down the list here and talk about exactly what you need to do. The first thing is that you need to be on a professional seller account. A professional seller account is that $40 a month subscription that you pay to Amazon. It unlocks all sorts of additional features, unlocks additional reporting, unlocks options to be able to do things like sponsored products, just really a multitude of things. User account management, so you can have multiple people have access to your Amazon account with different levels of access. So just a lot of great benefits to being on the professional seller account. It also eliminates, there's a $1 per order fee that Amazon charges for individual sellers who are not on the professional seller account. That $1 additional fee is waived. So if you think about it, if you are doing at least 40 product sales in any given month, you may actually have to be beneficial just to switch over to the professional account anyways, because it's going to be a wash. So that's something to keep in mind. A lot of benefits to going onto the professional seller account. but you do need it to be able to do anything with PPC. The other thing is, if you are not using the FBA program and you are fulfilling orders yourself, you must be able to ship to all US addresses. So when you're setting up your shipping templates in Amazon, you need to make sure that that is set up correctly. You also need a valid credit card, but you really do need a valid credit card anyways to be able to be selling on Amazon. So that's kind of a moot point. And then your products listings must be in one or more of the available categories. With that being said, there are some categories that do not allow you to sell these. Not allow you to sell. It's not allow you to run ads in them, and that includes jewelry, the adult category, anything used, and refurbished products. Anything in those categories, Amazon does not allow anyone to advertise in them. You will sometimes see advertising in, let's say, the jewelry category, and that's because there are some grandfathered clients that still are able to do that, but they are not accepting anyone new into advertise in the jewelry category specifically.
Tim, I wanted to add another caveat on that one that we've learned extremely recently. There is also the ability in some of these restricted areas to do a coupon. And if a product has been allowed to have a coupon on it, you can then do do PPC on those couponed items as a workaround in these particular circumstances on a case-by-case basis. It seems to be like a random workaround that isn't documented anywhere, but we have had some experience with some of our clients that we've been able to get around this particular rule through the coupon route that isn't obvious in any way. Only we stumbled upon it very recently, so I figure I'd mention that.
Great, thank you, Paul. Always getting you the up-to-date information.
Yeah, that
All
rare and elusive up-to-date information.
With Amazon, it certainly seems to be the case sometimes. All right. So an additional, so kind of expanding a little bit on the used and refurbished products, you can only advertise new products. So if it's a used product, you actually can't advertise that. And then this is one of the big things. The listing must be eligible for the buy box. And there's a way you can actually see whether or not your product qualifies for the buy box. And that's that actually is covered in another webinar, but you can actually look at it in your inventory screen by enabling, there's a certain column that shows you whether or not you are buy box eligible. And again, we did a whole entire webinar about the buy box. Not only how do you qualify to even be in the buy box, but how can you improve your chances of winning the buy box. So I really encourage anyone to really look at that, especially if you're finding that you're not in the buy box or that you're not getting sales because you're competing with all these other sellers on this particular listing. So that's a really good thing for you to check out.
I wanted to chime in there. Like Tim said, it's one of the most important factors of PPC, obviously, but for a couple reasons here. For one, this is going to force you to not only stare at your competition or see why you don't have the buy box, but this also kind of forces you in that position. There's examples of, for example, a product that's listed at $100 and you're fulfilled by merchant, you sell it for $100 as well. You'll often find that you are not even eligible for the buy box simply because you are fulfilled by merchant, and your shipping times are nothing compared to a Amazon fulfilled order. So that $100 item sold by someone, by Amazon or a third-party seller in the FBA program, will always get the buy box because it's going to arrive 4 days earlier, and Amazon wants it that way. They're very customer centric. And so just wanted to point out how important the buy box is, not only to be competitive and make money, but how PPC can almost force you to put yourself in that position, as uncomfortable as it might be.
Great, Blake. Yeah, that's some really good point about the importance of getting into that buy box. I also wanted to touch a little bit, because you reminded me, Blake, that if you do compete with other sellers on your listing and you do advertising, and if someone clicks on your ad and goes to your listing or goes to that listing, what happens is that the customer is going to be presented with your offer for that particular product first. So your offer will be in the buy box. That doesn't prevent a customer, once they're on the listing, to then go and click on the option at the bottom that says see other offers for this particular product. You know, it might be one that's prime or what have you. So you may spend money on a click to go to the listing. They are presented with the option to buy from you first, and I think most customers will in fact buy from you because they saw that price already before clicking on the listing. But they do have the option to click and buy from a different seller with a different offer. So that's one thing that I wanted to make sure everyone is aware of when it comes to competing with other people on the same listing. All right, it's great. So let's move on to the next section here. How does the pay-per-click campaigns work? First of all, there's two kinds of campaigns, and the first one we're going to talk about is automatic pay-per-click campaigns. With automatically targeted campaigns, you bid on the top relevant customer searches based on your product information. So what that means is that Amazon will start generating searches or search terms based on the information that's already inside of your product listing, and will continually work to create more and more different searches to try and find out what customers are searching for. And you can review what customers are searching for, and we're going to dive into a lot more into this later on. But you can use what's called a search term report to get very detailed and relevant information on exactly what kind of searches triggered your ad and how many of those impressions you got and how many times people clicked on those. So automatic campaigns are really an essential part of this. And as you can see, you can, as I mentioned, you can see which customers' search terms resulted in impressions and clicks. The other thing that it does is it really saves time because you do not need to do a bunch of research into similar products and everything else. It's a very good tool to use to do some of that initial keyword research and shape a lot of things. And again, we're going to go into more detail momentarily of how to leverage that information. It's again a good way to really start generating impressions and product awareness at a low cost. So Blake, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else to this section. I think it's pretty straightforward how the automatic campaigns are designed to work.
Very straightforward. I think it's just important, which I forgot to add to the presentation, that always running a very low bid, low daily budget automatic campaign is invaluable as a company on Amazon, and we encourage you to always do that so you're consistently obtaining at least a bare minimum of search term results in a report that Amazon provides in chunks of every 60 days. So just highlighting its importance and its value for even a minimum bid approach.
Sure, and it looks like Paul wanted to comment on that.
Right. Well, the other big thing here is, even if you're not a fan of PPC and you don't want to jump into it right away because you don't want to spend money on ads, we also look at this as a great tool to gather tons of information on these impressions, click-throughs, and purchases. And because if you run a PPC campaign on Seller Central, you're then able to gather with an auto-targeted campaign, what is it that people search to find your listing? What percentage of them saw your listing or your ad? What percentage of them clicked through? What percentage bought? Because that valuable data can then be taken from Amazon and then plugged into your organic optimization of the listing itself, which we covered earlier in this webinar. So there are other ways to go about doing keyword research, but if you just run an auto-targeted campaign, Amazon is just going to give you a whole bunch of really valuable data that you can then take from them to enhance the organic listing, which will improve the organic traffic that you get to that item. So that's a really important thing to think about. Don't think about it as only taking that information to then to then just get the PPC, the click-throughs, and the ads to just get people to buy that way. Think of it as also as a data gathering tool, really valuable information that you can then use to optimize your listing further.
Great. Thank you, Paul, for helping it describe how beneficial it can be. And in fact, we actually have, well, I guess might be just a two-part question here from Elizabeth. Is it better to have one campaign for all products or divide into separate product groups? Should all products be in there or the best-selling ones? So definitely two very related questions here. And I guess we really didn't kind of go into how we actually set up these campaigns. Pretty straightforward generally in Amazon. You just select the products that you want to be included with this campaign, set a budget, and set a bid of how much you're willing to spend per click, and let it run. But in answer to this question, we like to get as much granular specific data as possible. Let's say if you're selling one product and it literally just varies based on color or just information like that, it might be a good idea to be able to put them all into the same ad group and run them all at the same time. But if you have several different products that very much differ from each other, it might be best to run separate campaigns, or if you're running the same campaign, run different ad groups for each one so you can get specific reporting on each individual item to see how they perform and see how well they do. We recently had a customer who included all of his products into one ad group, and he found that a lot of people were being directed to the least popular option, and because they were all part of the same ad group, he had no control over trying to change bids and everything so that he can get to the ones that is more common and is more popular into ad results higher up. So yeah, we recommend trying to be as granular as possible, even with these automatic campaigns. Run an automatic campaign with your most popular one, and then maybe run a couple other ones with some of your second or third most popular ones to see what happens. But it's just the more granular you are, the better the data is that you get back.
And one more, tip that we could give Elizabeth, because she did ask a good question, which we're kind of covering overviews today, but this is granular, is that you could also run for the same exact group of items, a different group though, ad group, based off price, and for an automatic campaign to almost see where the threshold of paying, in certain people's eyes, a high bid amount, but actually starts creating a favorable ACOS. So another way to use automatic is bid threshold, especially if you can afford it.
Right.
For the same exact term ad group.
Yeah, there's a lot that we can dive into just PPC, but we're really doing a high level overview at this point just to kind of get you an idea of how important it can be in terms of search terms. And we're going to tie this all together before we finish, but thank you again for that question, Elizabeth. All right, so the next section that we want to cover is we're going to talk about how do manual campaigns work. All right, so we ran some automatic campaigns. We got a good idea of some search terms that maybe we want to capitalize on. So the way that manual campaigns work is that you bid on the specific keywords that you choose. So you can actually go through and fine tune and target exactly what you want to show up for. And it's a lot more granular. There are 3 ways that you can have search terms match, and that's either with a broad match. That's where any basically the search term must match all the keywords. They can also match any synonyms, misspellings, related searches, or close variations, but in any order. So if you put a bunch of terms in there, they have to be able to have search for all those terms, but it doesn't matter in which order, and there can be some variation to what they searched for. So again, that's why they call that broad, because it kind of casts a larger net to try and grab more people. If you are trying to get a little bit more specific, you can say that they must match the same sequence of words. It's still a little bit more flexible in terms of, there are some common misspellings and things like that it will take care of. But if you're trying to be very specific and say that I only want to show up for people who type in this exactly, then you can do an exact match, which will exactly match a keyword or a sequence of words in order. And the other thing about manual campaigns is that you can set custom bids for each individual keyword, which is really the power of doing the manual campaigns. But you will know sometimes what you should actually be bidding on, or know what customers are searching for without running some of those automatic campaigns. And that's why we recommend that you run an automatic campaign when you start with, to get that information. Start running some manual campaigns, but keep those automatic campaigns running at a low cost per click, at a low bid amount, just to continue to capture additional data and additional sales that you may not have gotten because a customer may have searched for something that you never thought of. So that's why a lot of experts recommend that you do both concurrently. All right. In terms of where your ads get placed, and I know we've covered this before, ads that show up can be on the desktop web browser, on tablet mobile browser, and within the Amazon app. They can also be found when you search on Amazon on the desktop. It actually can be at the top row of your search results, right side of the page in search results, the middle of the search results, bottom of the search results, the last row of the browse results page, and the product detail pages. So when actually someone is browsing another product that's related to yours, they may actually see a section that says sponsored products related to this item, and that's another ad. And the reason why there's so many different places is Amazon is constantly experimenting with different ways to display ads on their website. So you may see a lot of different things than even what I have put here, but it's important to know that you don't specifically control where your ads belong. Amazon will determine that for you. All right. And lastly, the only way that the ads will even display is, again, if you win the buy box. Items that will not show in the buy box will show you in the campaign that the product is not in the buy box and therefore not eligible to show up. And again, those ads will not be displayed to customers. All right. So that covers both of those two major topics. And at this point, we just need to kind of tie it all together. And this is something that Paul and Blake and I have already covered and touched on, which is how to really leverage your pay-per-click information to direct some of your changes to your listings, like search terms. So for just to give you some examples, what you want to do is, after you've run an automatic campaign for a little while, it's good to run a search term report to start understanding what's going on. We talked about before about gathering that very valuable information. Well, the search term report is where you're going to find it. The way that the search term report works is that it's only going to show blocks of the past 60 days. So when you go to request a report, it's actually going to only show you the last 60 days worth of information. So when you request a report, you have the option of doing just an on-demand report, which again will show you the last 60 days worth of information. Or you can actually schedule a report to run automatically, which will then be available at between 6 and 8 a.m. Pacific time of the date that it's due. So might be a good idea to maybe run a scheduled report to run once a week or so. This way you can constantly get updated information. You can go back and download those reports at any time. What's contained in each of these reports? The first thing that you'll see is that it'll only show you search terms that have at least had one click. Was this direct, Blake, and I think Blake was the one that put this in here. Was that directly from Amazon in terms of this information?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Because I'm trying to think back to some of the reports that I've seen recently, and I think that they show ones that have at least some impressions, maybe no clicks. I'm trying to remember. Paul, I don't know if you're
I think the last reports lately have been actually showing 0 clicks.
Yeah,
yes,
that's what I remember.
That's my recollection as well. So this help file that you referenced might be out of date, because I do definitely remember there's a lot of impression data in there. So you get a lot of impression data if there was no clicks as well.
All right, great. Give me 1 second. Okay, so yeah, so maybe this means that it has to have at least had one click, maybe not within those last 60 days, but even before then. So perhaps that's what they mean. We need to get some clarification on that. But we are probably going to do a whole webinar about PPC specifically because there's a lot of information in there. The report also contains a specific campaign and ad group that search term belongs to. The actual search term the shopper has entered, so it actually tell you what did the customer search for that resulted in your automatic ad showing up. Then, of course, it'll show you how many impressions, how many clicks, and how many sales that search term generated. And lastly, it'll show you an average cost per click. It's going to show you a lot of more information, but that's really the most important information that you want to know about. All right, so how do you request a search term report? In Seller Central, you go to reports and then you click on advertising reports. Once you're there, you can click at the top. There's an option that shows search term report. Then you'll see a button that says request report. You'll then have to wait a few minutes for it to generate the report, depending on how much data it is. It might take longer, might take shorter. But once it's done, the report status will say that it's ready to download. So you just click on it and you download it. It gets downloaded in a CSV or text file formats, which then we recommend copying and pasting into Excel so you can start organizing and making sense of this data. But yeah, very valuable. And we're actually on our last slide here, so we'll get through this guy. Now that we have all this valuable information, what do I do with it? You can use all sorts of techniques to identify which are very high performing shopper searches. Then using that information, you might want to start adding some of those search terms into your listings, into the search term box, or might want to make some modifications to your titles, bullets, descriptions, other information like that. You may also want to start creating manual campaign ad groups so that you can start capitalizing on some of those specific searches and get more targeted customer ads. And then if you are running manual campaigns, you might use that information to help adjust some of your bids and improve your average cost of sale, which will help you make the most out of each dollar you spend. Then lastly, if you have any poor performing customer search terms, you may want to add those negative search terms into the negative keywords of automatic campaigns. So you stop searching so you stop showing up and spending money on search terms that are just irrelevant or not performing for you. And again, you may want to use that information to adjust your bids and improve your performance of your ads. Great. And then with that, Elizabeth says, thank you. We're glad that we were able to help you with your search terms. And with that, I want to pass this back over to Terry, who's going to close us out for today.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tim. That was great. I got a lot of good information on that one. These are conversations I have with a lot of our potential clients on a regular basis. So that'll be valuable stuff. And Elizabeth, we always thank you for coming by, and she's one of our favorite clients. And we encourage you to come and bring your specific questions to us at these webinars. It's a great way to get some information from us. I want to take a quick run through the website real quick before we say goodbye today. And the first thing I want to point out is up on top is our webinars are all there. So you can go ahead and click on that and you can review this webinar shortly, as well as all the other ones that we've done in the past. So great way to get some information, and that's always here at your disposal. I want to remind you again that it's all about getting you targeted customers, whether it's Amazon consulting, responsive web design, SEO services, or doing a virtual tour for you. All of those things are ways we can help you increase your business substantially. Want to talk to you, give us a call when you have time at 800-238-1811, or email me directly, terry@awesomedynamic.com. Also on our website, you can get on our awesome list where you can sign up and know about all our upcoming events and things we have going on. So it's a great way to keep in touch. And as always, I would say this: if you learned anything valuable today and were happy with what you saw, we would love to have you give us a 5-star Google review. It means a lot to us in our business to have you do that. And Tim's showing you there where you can go ahead and do that. Click the blue button and go ahead, we would really appreciate it. With that being said, I think we've covered everything for today. Thanks to everybody on our team for helping out today. Great job. And we thank you for coming. Bring your friends. We're here every Thursday at 12:30 Central.